Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Psychopinion. Today, we got a boys' day going on. We got Robert Walker and Stephen Tour here with us.
Thanks for having us.
I definitely appreciate you guys being back on. Liza is still on a sabbatical of sorts. Everything's fine. She's fine, in case you're wondering. She's just not here right now. She'll be back soon. To get into today's episode, today's topic is really just about memory and perception. Some different kind of concepts and ideas and constructs around memory and perception for people. And I kind of want to start off by the intro here saying that we think memory is much more solid than it actually is. We think of events as real and what actually happened. That is not always the case. How can you trust an internal system that brings you to the refrigerator just to forget why? I mean, realistically. We're going to rely on our memory, and I don't know why the fuck I'm standing in front of the fridge. One of my best friends, and this is an interesting story I want to start up with. One of my best friends, we were friends for 25 years. If you asked her what her favorite memory ever with me was, and Robert's probably even heard her tell this story before.
That I have.
It was that her and I were in we were walking down the street in Georgia. We were at a club. We went into a club in Georgia, and we saw the UK Subs. I don't know if you're familiar with the band or not, but UK Subs was like a punk band. And I believe that there was a little person at the door, or was doing security, something like that. And she's told multiple people across the board this is her favorite memory with me. She's put it on Facebook. She's told people at parties. And the honest to God truth is that her and I were never in Georgia together. Never once been to Georgia with that woman. And we never saw the UK Subs together. And all the other details obviously make no sense to me either because it never happened. But she swears that is her favorite memory with me. And I just wanted to start off with that story because it's just funny because she truly believes this thing happened that didn't happen. It just didn't. I don't have the greatest memory, but I think I would at least slightly remember being in Georgia with her and seeing the UK Subs, and I have zero recollection of that whatsoever. So, with that being said, we're going to kind of outline some, legal things here with the, as far as witnesses go and things like that. What do you guys have to add here about the memory thing? What do you guys got here for me?
It's funny how memory works. I know there was a story that me and my friends in high school would tell each other all the time, and a few years later, one of my friends was telling the story like he was a part of it, and he was never there for the situation at all. He heard it so many times that he thought that he was a part of that happenstance.
Yeah, and
she wasn't.
And honest to God, it probably really was that he believed that he was a part of that.
Yeah.
I doubt it was like a fitting in thing or anything. It's funny how memory works, and there's just so many strange things that are going to come into this, and examples of how your mind may play tricks on you. Stephen, do you have any interesting memory stories or types of examples of things we're talking about here?
Well, certainly. My memory, especially from long ago, is horrible. And I'm told this regularly by my wife, whose memory is unreal. I mean, I was going to say she's an elephant, but her memory is.
The memory of an elephant.
That's right. So,
other than that, she's a beautiful young lady.
Correct.
All right.
But I've often questioned how does memory truly work? I know how it works through my brain and how I remember things, but is it a still frame memory that you piece together? Is it a video memory that you can see things in real time or in emotion? And when I've talked to, again, my wife about things like this, she can remember full days, individual things in time all the way back to when she was a toddler, wow. Which I certainly cannot.
Yeah, nowhere close for me.
No, but I think it's interesting that she can see kind of a video of how a day played out, where I might have a few individual still frames that a lot of times need to get coaxed out. They're not just there available for me to just pull from, but somebody might say something that draws me to to seeing or thinking of a specific thing that, then I'm like, oh yeah, and then an image kind of pops in my head, and that whole memory surrounding that kind of plays out. But a lot of times I'm not certain if that's truly how it did play out.
And I feel like I had that same issue. Someone will bring up a memory, just what? I don't really remember that. And after a while, I'll start, thinking about it and just have it, sitting and simmering in the brain juices, and I'll slowly start to remember, oh yeah, that did actually happen. But pulling it right out of the hat, I sometimes can't do it.
Yeah, personally, I've got a terrible memory, and I think that I'm somebody that I don't even necessarily consciously mean to do this, but I tend to discard information in my brain very quickly if I feel like I don't need it anymore. It's almost like I've left jobs before and 3 months later couldn't tell you the people I worked with, and I've worked with them for 5 years.
I'm the same way.
It's just I feel like maybe, I don't know why, but that part of my brain, I'm just like, I don't need to know these people anymore. I don't go to work there anymore. It's caused some embarrassment in my life, to be quite honest with you, when you have other people that do remember you, and you're sitting there trying to place them, and you're like, oh, I worked next to that guy for 5 years. Like, I saw him more than my girlfriend at the time. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy, kind of what you hold on to, how you hold on to things, and I'm sure we both have dozens of examples. One came up last night. We went out. Rob and I went out last night to see a Sexy Sax guy.
Yeah, Tim Capella.
Yeah, he was in Greenville, and it was a good time. He is the saxophone player in Lost Boys.
The Lost Boys.
And it was a good time.
Best movies of my childhood.
But we're not getting into Lost Boys. We're getting into the fact that we ran into Doug. There's this guy, Doug. I don't even know his last name. But I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, I recognize him from somewhere. And it, out of nowhere occurred to me that there was a previous time that I had been hanging out with this guy, and we both got just about blackout drunk. And we were talking, we became best friends for the night.
Might be why you don't remember.
Yeah, and it's why I don't remember, but it's interesting that as I'm sitting there, who is that guy, that the memory did come back. It's like I actually kind of remember where we were and what we were doing and what we were talking about, even though that memory was basically gone. You know what I mean? So recollection also is kind of an interesting thing, and kind of how that happens, and recalling information. To kind of move forward with different types of situations dealing with memory, witnessing crimes, for example, is kind of another direction of how people remember and how we collectively remember. Two or more people never recall the same events that played out. We just know that. It's interesting because even though we're all living in the world, even though we're both here right now, tomorrow, if we were to explain what happened today, we'd probably have 3 similar but different memories of what happened. And this happens a lot, and that's why sometimes eyewitnesses aren't always the most reliable by police or when you're dealing with legal situations. And usually what you kind of, in those situations, your best reliability, and I've always said this and thought this in my life, is that you really want to get down to the truth. You kind of ask everybody and then take all of the stuff that's the same in those recollections and then kind of cut all the other shit in the middle, and you're going to be the closest to the truth that way.
I've found that anytime I have to remember something that's super important, I've got to write it down. I've got to write it down in the moment, because even 5-10 minutes later, if I get off on something else, I might completely forget certain pertinent parts of it. And I think that ends up being a big problem when you interview somebody today about something they saw versus 2 weeks from now what they saw. It's going to be completely different, right?
Oh, hands down.
Just because of what you can recall, and then what you might be swayed into believing, where your mind's playing tricks on you to say, well, was he wearing a red hoodie, or was it red pants, or was it a red car he was driving?
And that definitely takes a large part into what we're going to be getting into also, talking about that. There's some scenarios that have come up where we found that there can be, things that are placed in memory, and memory bias, for example. So what memory bias is some examples of this are rosy retrospection, which is recalling the past as being better than it actually was. I think a lot of us do this with relationships. I think most people have had that relationship that maybe wasn't the best relationship at the time. That's why you broke up, but maybe you really did care for that person, so you do kind of look back on them with a bit of fondness. You forgive them for certain things, and you kind of the story ends up like better in the end in your head than it was when it was actually playing out. That's a good example of rosy retrospection. We have egocentric bias is another example where you're recalling your past in a way that's more self-glorifying than it should be. In this situation, I did have a friend in the past where it's like everything that happened, he could somehow spin himself into being the hero of the situation, and that sometimes things that didn't actually even happen, he would put in the story just to kind of make it more, he was the man. He took care of the situation. Everybody was safe because of him.
I've known a few people like that.
And it's like, when you're sitting there listening to the story, you're like, that's not what happened at all. But this guy, truly believes that. So to me, it's kind of interesting because everybody sees everything differently. So it's kind of like we're all living in the same world, but we're all kind of not, in a way, if that makes sense. A really deep thought I had when I was thinking about the topic for the show is that I really thought it was interesting how we even see each other as different people. And if you think about this, it's totally true. To take you, for example, Robert, how if I were to talk about you and how well I know you and facts about you and how I see you, it'd probably be very different than Steven. And very different from your mother, and very different from everybody else that knows you. And then, you take that in consideration as well as the fact that every one of us have different memories of an event. It's almost like we're all just kind of blind walking around doing our own thing in a way, because we're just sort of seeing our section of it, which is very different from everybody else's section. But, to get a little deep here is kind of interesting that nothing really is the same at all.
You get two different perspectives from two different people. It's very different stories sometimes.
Absolutely, and it's like that's a concept that kind of blew my mind a little bit just thinking about it. I was like, wow, damn, there's like no two stories in the world that are exactly the same or could be exactly the same. So that was just kind of interesting to me, thinking about that. And a really, really good example of kind of how we remember things, and this is why I was talking about how we see individuals different, is I don't know if either one of you are familiar with How I Met Your Mother, the TV show.
I am. I've not watched much of it.
Okay.
Briefly.
So I enjoyed How I Met Your Mother, and in season 8, episode 15, the episode was about the Dahmer Doppler effect. And what this was is it was a really interesting, kind of funny scenario that played out on the show, where it was how you feel about a person will reflect in your memory of how events played out. So Doppler, we're talking about Lloyd Doppler from Say Anything, the John Cusack with the
holding up the boombox.
Yeah, holding up the boombox, very sweet guy. We're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, serial killer, creepy as hell. So we're talking about two very, very different people. Now, to put this into perspective, let's say that there is random woman A, and she has a crush on Robert. So Robert writes her a song, and this is actually writing a song as an example they used on the show, but Robert writes her a song, and she does like Robert, so this is a very sweet song. She sees this as being a sweet gesture. She's smiling. He looks romantic. This is very nice. Now, if we were to take the same scenario and this girl does not like Robert, has not had a good feeling about him, has not had positive interactions, and he shows up and writes her this song, it's going to come off as very creepy. It's going to come off as very like, wow, this guy wrote this song for me, and that's what the hell is going on. So I thought that was interesting to include in this show about memory, because I just thought that was a really cute part of that episode. If anybody wants to see that, it's a really good episode. Like I said, it's season 8, episode 15. And it's just a cool concept to me about how the way that we feel about people even reflects how we remember things that happened. Whereas, I might be like, damn, the thing Steven did is really weird. And Robert might be like,
man, it's cool.
No, that was a cool thing.
I loved it.
Yeah, that was normal. That made sense.
I'm sure it was pretty weird.
So I almost feel like it is. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? The concept of just, it's so interesting that even the idea of how we feel about somebody affects our memories. What do you guys think about that? I think that's kind of a cool concept and interesting.
I mean, hands down, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Everyone just because they have their own experiences with that person, will lead them to view their situation completely different than the person that was sitting right next to them.
Yeah. And I mean, even in situations, like I've had situations at work, for example, where me and another guy will have the same boss, and I got to know the guy better. I kind of understand where he's coming from, and I kind of understand what he's trying to do. And he'll come up and tell us to do something, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I get it. And the guy next to me is like, man, what a dick. This guy's always like coming at us like that. And I'm like, yeah, he's really not, man. He's just stressed out. Like, I get it. I mean, he's got a tough job too, and you know, it's he's just asking us to do this thing. You know, you thinking too much about it, but our relationship and our perspective of that man is different. So he's like, man, this guy's always coming at us some kind of way, and I just don't feel that way, and that's just another example kind of going off of that.
I think that having a specific relationship with somebody, if it's a good relationship, those are memories you want to remember, and so they're going to be more fond and dearer to your heart and close, where if it's somebody that you passed off or don't care too much about, those are going to go in the file drawer in the back, right? So, I mean, at least that makes sense to me, and it's probably how I've compartmentalized things over the years. So
I will say I 100% agree with you, except for if it's really weird. I don't know why, but I tend to have a special filing cabinet for really weird shit, and I remember that probably more than even the affectionate stuff. Like, I'm just like,
no matter what, like, don't unlock these memories.
Yeah, like forever I will remember, you know, some woman walking up behind me in the grocery store talking about how, you know, she's glad that her cheetah didn't eat all the granola bars. I'll probably remember that a lot longer than I'll remember an affectionate moment with Steven. So, I mean, I'm just, you know, just throwing that out there. I've got a special memory bank for weird stuff, and it's like I'll be sitting there a year later like, what the fuck was that about? Like, cheetahs eat granola bars? Does she know somebody named Cheetah? Is that her? Does she call her kids Cheetah?
Yeah, sometimes the really weird ones do stand out. I remember I was working one day. I had a necklace that was from the anime Trigun. It was a bullet that said Trigun on it. And I'm sitting there with my coworker. We're chatting, putting stuff up on some shelves. And this guy walks past. And immediately, like, as soon as he gets past the eye line of sight, he beelines it back around, walks straight up to me, ignores my coworker, just like, I'd like to talk to you today about Jesus. And she just starts losing it, trying not to laugh, because, you know, we're on the clock, we're working, you know, not to be disrespectful. And I'm trying to, you know, be like an actual decent human being and try to deal with this guy in a respective manner. But it was just such a very weird happenstance that I'm just never going to forget that one thing.
That was so strange that just happened out of the blue, and it's just, you kind of find yourself asking yourself multiple times later on, like, what the hell was that all about?
Something weird or something that's very comical. I have a memory that wasn't even my original memory. It was something based off of what my mom told me she did, and therefore it stuck with me. When I was a lot younger, and she actually, for a brief time, worked as a cashier at a gas station. And so my mom's the sweetest woman in the world, but she can sometimes say things that don't add up right. And so this guy walks up. Well, I'm gonna blow it right out of the gate here, but comes up. He's got long blonde hair. He's got his head down. He's going through some money, and my mom looks up, doesn't catch his face, but says, "Oh, hi, ma'am. How are you?" And then she says, "Oh, when's your baby due?" And the guy looks up, and it's just a fat dude with a beer belly, and he's putting a six-pack up on the table, and he's like, "I'm a man." And of course, she was super embarrassed.
I'm all man, baby.
Yeah.
That's a rough one.
That's one that's always stuck with me.
In retail especially, that's an easy mistake to make, because I don't know about everybody else, but sometimes you're just in such a rush you don't even catch much about people. But that's also why I tend to not really say anything.
Yeah, well, I don't think you ever ask when a woman's baby's due, ever.
I'm actually going to piggyback off that. I had an experience a long time ago in retail. I had my back to someone that was shopping, and I had very long hair. So I just hear this question, excuse me, which do you think has better absorbency? Oh. And I just slowly turn around. Here's this lady with 2 different packs of tampons, and she sees the beard, and she goes ghost white and just turns around without saying anything and walks away.
I mean, I don't know, dude. Maybe I would have waited to see what you had to say if I was her.
Right. Yeah, just things I'll never forget.
At that point, it's already awkward, so let's just go for broke, you know? And with that, with kind of funny things based around memories, sort of a fun thing, and we mentioned this in a previous show, and ironically enough, Robert and I had said we'd probably talk more about this in the show, is the Mandela Effect. So if you guys haven't heard of the Mandela Effect, it's defined as a commonly held false memory. In the field of psychology, the term false memory is applied to anything that a person remembers incorrectly or inaccurately. As such, the term Mandela Effect is defined as a false yet widely held recollection. So what we're talking about here is multiple people across the board remembering something that's not true. And with that, I actually had a little game I just kind of wanted to play with you guys. And
before you start that, the reason it's called the Mandela Effect is because of Nelson Mandela.
The name was coined after political leader Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Death in 2013. Countless people swore he died when he was held prisoner in the 1980s, and distinctly remember news coverage of the funeral when he, as I stated, in fact died in 2013.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
sorry to jump on you there, but I had it, and I just wanted to, I wanted to put
good.
it out there. So, it was December 5th, 2013. He was actually 95 years old, just for a little background there. And then I've got some examples, and I just kind of want to see what you guys think. Without Stephen looking over here at my paper. So the first one I have here is peanut butter. All right. And what do you remember the peanut butter being called? Is the peanut butter Jiffy or Jif?
It's Jif.
I remember it as, that's a rough one. I don't know. I would say Jiffy.
Okay.
Choosy moms choose Jif. That's why I remember.
Oh. But this one actually, you're not. So I wouldn't feel bad, Robert. So realistically, if we're going on a point scale here, we've got 1-0. We've got the little tagline here to help Steven out. But a lot of people say that they think that people confuse it with Jiffy because there is Skippy. So people kind of put that sort of Jiffy, Skippy, kind of thing and confuse it. So, I wouldn't feel bad, and this wouldn't be on this if multiple people across the board didn't think the same thing.
That's why it's the Mandela Effect.
So, continuing here, I've got Oscar Mayer or Oscar Mayer, and it's either Mayer or Meyer.
Going with the E.
I'm going with the A.
And you are right, Stephen. I feel like Stephen's studying for this. I'm just saying.
I've never studied for a test in my life, so.
So it is Mayer, which is honestly, I looked this up. I have this here. Before I put all this here, I would have 100% went with Meyer with the E.
Yeah.
So I'm in the same boat with that one. I really am not even gonna lie about that. So do we have Sex in the City or Sex and the City?
And.
Okay, you both have that one right. We said we'd have a show about this, but I do want to include some other things here, and we could just have fun with this all day. So I wanted to also talk about, as we mentioned earlier in the show, how certain events or memories can even be adjusted, or there can be things added to them. We found this with regression therapy. So regression therapy is, if you guys are not familiar, is therapy that focuses very specifically on past events and how they influence the way we behave in the present day. This is particularly relevant to those trying to overcome childhood abuse. Still, it can also apply to people who were subject to any abuse in relationships in the past. Now, the typical way that we go through regression therapy is there's the steps of preparation, conducting the regression techniques, express and release of emotions previously repressed, relearning, reprogramming of the subconscious, and then the conclusion of the session. Now, past life regression therapy has the great risk of implanting false memories in patients and thus causing significant harm. this is a violation of the principle of non-malfeasance, which is surely the most important principle in medical ethics. Now, what we're getting at here is that this therapy, so you had a traumatic event when you were younger, and it has caused you to have a certain reaction in your adult life. You can be hypnotized, and we can go back to that event and give you coping mechanisms and help you deal with that situation differently in your past, in your mind, and it will help you to cope in the future and help you to be better for those kinds of scenarios. Like they said in here, mostly with abuse and things like that, traumatic childhood abuse, things like that. So, what do you guys think about that? People kind of getting in there and dicking around with your memories.
That's pretty wild. Obviously, I think you're at your weakest point when somebody else has control over implanting something into your mind or what you thought might have happened. That's a scary thing for certain.
Absolutely. To add a little bit to this, if you look it up, there was in the 90s, there was a big thing going on where they're using this regression therapy technique quite a bit, and they found that it was actually implanting memories, and a lot of people backed away from it. Now, I'm not going to say that people still don't use it. I'm not going to say that it's still not a technique that's used, but it's one of those things where you really need to know what you're doing. You have to be really careful. It's very serious, honestly, and
it's difficult when you're dealing with a patient that has blocked it out for a reason.
Right.
You know, their brain doesn't want to go back to that memory. It's dealt them so much pain. And trying to force it open, they don't remember it for a reason, and it's kind of fresh Play-Doh at that point. Like, a minor thing might, if you say the wrong thing, then they are possibly going to remember it in a different light.
Yeah.
That could potentially trigger a ill effect moving forward too, right?
Yeah, it could.
And it's also, I think that what has happened in some cases is dealing with this in criminal type cases, say where there was a child that was abused. If that child were to hear people talking about things and everybody talking about the case and kind of, making assumptions and things, I think that can also kind of affect the memory as well. So you're kind of, that's really why it's so dangerous, is that memories are a delicate thing. And talking about going back and changing, almost going back in time to change an event so that you can cope with it now or in the future is, to me, it's just a very, very dangerous concept, dangerous idea. Interesting though.
Absolutely. I mean, I've obviously seen a lot of movies that kind of play on that idea. Speaking of DiCaprio there with the one where he's on the island and everything.
Shutter Island.
Shutter Island.
Oh,
I mean,
wow,
that was pretty wild. Like, just kind of, implanting certain things in his memory to try to help him. That was the whole thing, right?
You won an Oscar for that, right?
No kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about, and that's the thing is that I was kind of getting at earlier, is that we're all have a different perception of each other, of everything that happens. Nothing is the same. We're all a fingerprint as far as it goes with memories and events and how we feel about people. And it's like, to me, with like the regression therapy and all that and implanting memories, it's so crazy to go back in time when nobody else knows what that looks like but you, kind of in your brain and your thoughts, and to mess with that or change that in any way, it's just such a strange concept to me.
When you guys have had memories about certain things of your childhood, especially for me in my early formative years of my youth, have you ever had a memory that's of a different perspective? Not you and through your eyes, but almost like a camera moving by watching you do something? Because I've had that happen before to me, where I've had a memory of like me doing something through my mother's eyes, or my mother's perspective. To give you an example, I was riding my BMX bike and I was doing wheelies up and down the street. Just hadn't learned how to do them, trying to figure out how far you could go back. And I remember, and I don't know if this is a suggestive memory from what my mother told me, and I've just kind of put pieces together, but she had told me that I had pulled back so far that I was virtually vertical, straight up and down one tire over another, and my body weight should have flipped me back over, but it didn't. And I came down, and she was getting ready to run to me like I was getting ready to fall, and I didn't. I looked over and I was like, "Yeah, how do you like that? That was pretty cool, huh?"
Yeah.
But I have
Like,
that
don't give
memory.
me a heart attack.
I have that memory of me doing that through the eyes of my mom across the street, which is weird, and I don't know how that happened.
I will say, not all my memories are first person as well.
And I think that part of that comes from when something is talked about so much, your mother telling you a story over and over and over again, or your family telling you a story over and over and over again. I do think that once we build that kind of almost like video memory in our head from somebody telling us about it so much, I feel like we can see it in that perspective, if that makes sense.
And because of that, it makes you so vulnerable to somebody monkeying around with your memories, right?
Oh yeah, it's
So, yeah.
absolutely and that's why it's memory. Memory is actually a pretty fragile thing, in my opinion. I mean, obviously we do have those Sheldon Coopers of the world, from Big Bang, who can remember every word he's ever read in every book, or Stephen's wife, who can literally tell you every event of a day. There are those special minds that can do those things, but the average mind, it's just such a different. It's just such a different experience. What's going on with us? How we feel? How the day has affected us? What's on our mind? What's been going on lately? All those things affect our thoughts, which are going to affect our memories, which are going to affect how we see things and how we view each other and how we view events in the world. And it's just so interesting to think that just no two alike. It's snowflakes, Memories are out there like snowflakes. There's just no two that are alike. and along the lines of messing with people's minds, there's also susceptibility, which is kind of, it's defined as easily affected or easily influenced. If people can trick you easily, this is an example of when you're susceptible to being tricked. Especially, sensitive, highly impressionable people. So a lot of what this is talking about is that this comes up a lot in like police cases, being under those lights, having a police officer, you did it. I know you did it. You put the knife in the pillowcase and threw it in the river, and you did this, and you went in the middle of the night and you murdered this person. We're all built differently. We all have different levels of maturity, of emotional maturity, of mental capacity, of education, and those things affect our brains and how we think and how we feel, and especially people that are less educated, people that maybe are a little more simple, I guess, to put in just a simple term, can be affected more this way, and we found that that's happened, that people will eventually believe that they committed this crime,
Or the grief-stricken are susceptible to that as well.
Yeah.
More so than the regular.
convincing somebody that it was their
Everyday
fault,
person.
Right.
or that they did it, or that they helped the events lead up to that. It's crazy because that is used a lot. Many groups, especially vulnerable to police influence during an interrogation, young people and individuals with cognitive defects, like I was saying, poor education, memory problems, language barriers, some medical conditions. These things all affect you, and as I was just saying, how you're going on is your mental effect, if you will, and it's crazy. It's crazy that you can literally have a confession that's made up in an interrogation room, and it happens a lot. And a lot of times you see it, it's almost like sad because the person that's confessing, it's like they probably shouldn't have even been alone during the interrogation because of whether it be mental acuity or lack of education, those types of things.
Or potentially, from that standpoint, somebody who feels like they're guilty even though they know they're not, but they feel in some way that it's their fault, so they'll take the blame for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I hear about that a lot too.
And when people say stuff enough, it's I remember a term from high school, megalomania. Megalomaniacs, referring to Hitler, people that have lies and tell lies and stand by their lies so exclusively that they begin to believe their lies and that is the truth. And that's a real thing as well. I mean, So if you were to put those thoughts in somebody's head and they were to roll them around quite a bit and repeat it a few times, I mean, there are people that really will believe that that's exactly what happened because they've convinced themselves of that. So I mean, it's kind of, that's why I'm saying it's people's minds is really a delicate thing. And one more point I really wanted to bring here. I have always been a night person. I've always suffered from some kind of insomnia. I mean, it's like, it's the funniest thing. It's like 6, 7 o'clock at night. I mean, I fight a nap at 6, 7 o'clock every night. I'm just exhausted at 6, 7 o'clock every night. Once that clock hits 8 o'clock, it's like I'm up. I'm going to be up for a while. I'm a night person. I just get this energy. So I've explored sleep a lot in my life because I feel like that has been kind of a problem for me. I've had night jobs before, and it's like I can kind of feel my some of my basic cognitive abilities kind of slipping a little bit from being up all night, especially over an extended period of time, working nights, things like that. So I did want to include sleep and how that affects our memory, because this is very important while we're on the topic. But during a night of sleep, some memories are strengthened. Research has shown that memories of certain procedures, like playing a melody on a piano, can actually improve while you sleep. Memories seem to become more stable in the brain during the deep stages of sleep. Each night while you sleep, the connections between neurons, called synapses, shrink to reduce or eliminate the memories you don't need, such as what you ate for breakfast last week and clothes you wore yesterday. The selective pruning of synapses during the night prepares you to form new memories the next day. Poor sleep impairs memory consolidation by throwing off the normal process that draws on both NREM and REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. It's a deeper sleep. There's the stages of sleep, and rapid eye movement, when you see somebody asleep and you can still see their eyes kind of moving, you're really in a deep sleep at that point.
Well, that's when you actually start dreaming, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it's when you really start to get that quality sleep that you need. Studies have been found that people who are sleep deprived are at risk of forming false memories. So that's what I'm saying, is that that's also another factor that we're talking about of these memories maybe being convoluted in one way or another. Is lack of sleep can very well do it. Sleep is extremely important, and I always try to look at it this way when I explain it to people. It's like when you defrag your computer. Everybody's defragged a computer, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. That's what happens when you sleep. It's almost like, just to make it fun, it's almost like you got a couple of little guys in there, the Keebler elves or something, and they're taking files and getting rid of the ones you don't need and making sure other ones are filed properly and kind of filling in the blanks on some and maybe even enhancing some so that it's, the things that you need to remember, you might have a better chance of remembering. You're going to do better on a test with sleep. I've found when I was in college that I've done the all-nighter studies, and I've also done the studies where I crammed as much as I could and then got a good night's sleep. Hands down, every time I got to sleep, I did better. It's just the way your mind works, and you would think, no, I need to keep it fresh. I need to go into the class having it right then, but you're not. You're more at risk of having false memories or even losing memories or maybe even forgetting when you have that lack of sleep.
I definitely don't sleep well. I'm the type that can hear a whisper in another part of the house in the middle of the night, which sucks, obviously, but because of that, I don't dream much either. But when I do, I found that regardless of if it's one of those dreams that lasts all night, but it's only like 2 minutes worth of a dream, it feels like you just didn't do anything or go anywhere, and then some of them are really elaborate. I can rarely remember virtually. I kind of got an idea what the dream was about. 5-10 minutes later, I just remember I had a dream, but I don't know what it was. And I wonder why that short-term memory loss is so prevalent.
Just a side note on dreams. If you ever want to remember a dream, it's like almost imperative that you either write it down or tell somebody like right away.
Immediately.
As soon as you tell somebody about your dream, you are like something like 90% more likely to remember it. So like if you, and I know this because sometimes I'll wake up and I'll go and I'll talk to my significant other, and I'll say, hey, I just had this dream and blah, 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 and I'll remember the dream for a week because I talked about it. But not talking about it, and even if I'm like, I want to remember this, I'm trying to remember this, without talking about it, without putting it out somehow.
Yeah, you have to solidify the memory
Yeah.
somehow.
You have to put it out there in one way or another. So, um,
Yeah, trying to go back and remember dreams is almost impossible, it feels like.
Or start one over after you've got up and gone to pee or
Yeah.
something.
Can I
Pick up
pick
where
up
you-
where I left off?
No, you
Exactly.
can't.
I feel like I've done that a little bit though. They do say that if you go right back to sleep, and they also say if you wake up, and I don't know about this because I feel like I've had a bad dream and I've woken up and I've gone right back to sleep and I've gone back to the bad dream. That's happened to me, but they also say that if you wake up from a bad dream and then you go right back to sleep, it kind of regains your control of the dream. Is I've read sources that say that, but I also feel like I've had the opposite happen. So some of the stuff, I mean, I'm sure is still theories, or maybe it's just a coincidence or happenstance or a one-time whatever. But mostly based in science. I mean, the facts are still there. I mean, sleeping is going to help your memory. That's a fact. I mean, and the memories are kind of more delicate than we think they are. You guys have anything that you'd like to add to?
Yeah, I looked into it a little bit, knowing that we were going to do this one, and I had heard about this in the past, but the difference between semantic memory and episodic memory, and kind of how that all works, and it's pretty cool that we have, each one of us has our own kind of version of each one of them, some more in tune with others, but and you're probably much more versed in this than I am, but from the semantic standpoint, that's the learned memories, the things that you've kind of firsthand learned. Is that how that is?
It's connected more to educational memory, whereas episodic memory would be something that happened.
Like a physical
Yeah,
event.
yeah.
So for the sake of, somebody taught you how to bake something, or your
Different,
grandmother,
like
your grandmother
baking
showed you how
something
to
yourself.
how to make something, and you had that style of memory versus you doing it 5 years later, and then 10 years later remembering 5 years ago what you did. So I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, I've also mentioned that my memories are all still frame memories, and I don't know if other people have that. Again, my wife has spoken that she has, but I question kind of how you guys remember things. Do you have the ability to be able to draw on certain events and play them out in your mind, or how does that work?
I know with me at least, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, certain memories that I just can't immediately pull up, the more I think about it, like over the next day or two, I'll remember a lot more, whereas when it was first mentioned, I will hardly even remember that it happened. And then I can give you a little bit more detail after, like 12 hours, 24 hours. And it's just weird that for me, sometimes it takes that much extra time just to remember minor details about an event.
I've had that happen before too, especially as my kids are getting older too, remembering things when they were very young, and in turn when I was younger, and how we went through those events. Seeing a picture like come up on Facebook, this was posted 10 years ago or something, is a cool one.
I know one of your daughters personally. We chat, and she's told me so many stories about when she was 3,
Yeah.
4, or 5, and I'm just like, okay.
How do you remember these
Yeah,
things?
So I can definitely say that she probably gets that from your wife a little bit.
My wife's in her mid-40s, and she remembers things when she was 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's
And-
insane.
And I'm not talking like we went to the beach, but that there was a guy in a green cap selling, snow cones. I mean, it's scary,
Yeah.
which obviously leads to the fact that I can never win an argument on memory alone. So
Oh, and at that point, after she's proven herself, even if she is bullshitting, you have to.
I have to believe it
Yeah.
because I have no clue. I mean,
And my memory is shit to the point where it's like things me and Robert, for example, in our friendship. Robert's a good friend of mine. We've done a lot of things together. I definitely know Robert well, and I care about Robert because we've done all these things together and we've become good friends.
Been good times.
And I remember, I could sit here and tell you memories that him and I have talked about a lot, or things that have just happened. But really, it kind of clumps in my head as just we've done a lot. We've been through a lot.
Right.
We've talked about a lot. And unless it's something that's been repetitive or something that we've brought up a lot or discussed a lot, I really couldn't give you much detail, but I would probably be able to recall it if Robert was to sit here and be like, yeah, but do you remember when we did this? Oh, yeah, fuck, I remember that. But I don't have a great memory for those things, and I don't know if it's maybe I just keep most of my stuff in my subconscious. I mean, getting into the conscious and subconscious and all that, I mean, that's a whole nother bag of bricks.
And I don't have control over it either. I've told my wife before, like, she'll be like, oh, we'll pass someplace. We'll be in Wilmington. And, oh, remember we had dinner there on our 7th wedding anniversary. I'm like, we've been here before? I mean, I don't remember being in this town before.
But I will tell you this. I do strongly believe, and I'm a huge believer, that the brain is capable of so much more than we know and understand, that I do believe that we have every single memory in there. Mm-hmm. Every single thing that we've ever done, said, every shirt we've ever worn is somewhere in there. And I do believe we have every record of that. I think it's just a matter of how we access it and what's accessible.
Oh, yeah.
We need to have our little inside-out emotions in our brain get their shit together.
It's always very exciting and comforting to have one of those memories from so long ago just kick in, and you're like, oh, wow, yes, I do remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And it brings back a flood of emotion.
Yeah, and a lot of times that happens with songs for me.
Sure.
You know, really good memories with people. I'll hear a song and I'll be like, oh man, the 6th grade dance where you know, Judy Hoffenpfeffer you know, danced with me to that song. That was really nice.
How's Judy, by the way?
Judy Hoffenpfeffer.
You guys remember the show Fringe?
Fringe?
It was on TV briefly.
I remember it coming out, and I never really watched it.
I watched a little bit of it. It was one of those ones that was kind of
remember it.
kid-friendly. You know, wife and I would always try to find something that if one of the kids walked in that night, we weren't having something crazy on. And when it comes to memory, again, it's so strange to me because you can sit up and study for something that's important to you and still not remember it. But yet, stupid things that have no significance at all.
You'll remember every single detail.
They said LSD, okay, which I've heard of. Didn't know what it was. It's lysergic acid diethylamide, and I will never forget that in my life, and I have no clue why. But they were always talking about it, and they said it like 2 or 3 times, and I can't get it out of my head. It doesn't matter. I can spell it out for you by just seeing it in my mind's eye, and I have no idea why I remember that. But it's kind of like a party trick now for me
it's
because
one of those random things. I mean, and I think we all do it too. I mean, it's like there's movies I could recite.
Oh
and
yeah,
there's
movies
in music, I remember the lyrics to almost every song that I've ever liked, and constantly my significant other is, how do you remember like every actor that's been in every movie ever? Because I'm that guy when we put on a movie and Kevin Bacon's in it. Just throwing an example out there, and I know there's a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever, but I really can sit there and I can like, oh yeah, Kevin Bacon, he was in this movie, he was with that guy, which is funny because that guy was in this other movie that this happened, and then that had to do with this movie, and the same director did that, which was the one who, you know, gave Kevin Bacon his, acting debut. You know, and that was all bullshit, what I just said. It's an example of how I can do that when I think of an actor or a movie, and I just have this. If I could take all of my movie knowledge, all of my lyrical knowledge, all of that, and put it towards a study, I would have PhDs out the ass.
Right.
But I have a hard time telling you about a guy that I worked with for 5 years. I have a hard time telling you every event Robert and I have been through, even though we're good friends.
Right.
I have a hard time with a lot of things, and as far as memory goes. But it's just funny because those things we hold on to, and that's one of those things. I mean,
Something I'd like to learn more about myself too, because I'm the same way when it comes to music and with movies. I'm faces and voices. Like I can hear a voice and I know exactly who it is. I can see a face. They have a beard. They can be dressed up as an alien, and I know who it is.
But the name.
Yeah,
Names for me are terrible. I can recognize faces.
I'm hey man, what's up, buddy? Until I've literally beaten it into myself to be able to remember somebody's name, and then I typically can hold on to it. But you might think, well, okay, he remembers songs because that's what interests him, or he remembers a face in a movie because that's what interests him. But I don't remember certain things of the most important and interesting times of my life with my kids, with my wife, other events. Those sorts of things sometimes can be vague or detached, so to the point where unless something comes up to bring it up, I might not even remember it at all. And that's what I kind of question. How does that work?
And what's interesting, because those should be the most important and valuable memories that you have, is with your family, with your loved ones, with your significant other, and so on. And it's just interesting how that is, because I'm exactly the same way. So I can say for sure that I definitely relate to that, and I definitely agree with that. It's just really interesting. My theories on that would probably be that maybe even technology in general, whether it be movies or music, is the beginning of what we're seeing now with the 10 seconds of attention span. And I mean, I know swiping through the phone, I remember every little TikTok video I've seen. When I see it again for a second, I'm like, oh yeah, that one, and keep going. Which is sad, because I'd love to forget 95% of that shit.
If I hear oh no, oh no, oh no again,
no,
oh my
oh
god.
No. Or the same, what was it, the ship, whatever.
Oh yeah, the little shanty.
Yeah, the pirate shanty that just came back around. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of shit that our minds do, and I think there probably is mind exercises. You see that sometimes in some of the games and stuff that's advertised. That there's mind games that you can use to sharpen up this acuity or that acuity.
What's your brain age?
Yeah, and I mean,
Keep your brain sharp.
Well, some of it probably does work, because I mean, I can say that the older generation, like my grandmother, and mostly my grandmother's, older family or friends, it's like they were like crossword puzzle junkies, and some of them had the best damn memories, and I don't know, there's something to that, keeping your brain sharp. I feel like most of the older people that I know that do those things usually are a little sharper. Usually do kind of recollect things a little bit easier. So
It's like the brain is almost like a muscle. You got to work it out every now and then to keep it in top shape.
And some people have more muscle than others.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting around listening to pirate shanties and oh no, and that just goes right out the damn window. So anyway,
one thing I wanted to bring up before we're done is, I think it's called like eidetic memory. Is that the term for those that remember everything that they see or read?
That sounds right.
And then, of course, you have like savants that can play an entire
song from hearing it once.
from hearing it once, and that's so cool.
Is it like Mozart
to
could
me,
play a song and then like turn upside down and play it backwards?
Yeah. First of all, obviously we don't know how that works, but it seems to be that there's always some other mental deficiency that goes along with that, which allows them to tap into a different portion of their brain. It might not always be the case, but it seems like there's a correlation there, and I wonder if you have to have one to be able to access the other.
Well, my theory, and I think that I've got a theory on that, and I've read some other theories on that, and like I said before, the access that we have to our brains, kind of how our brains work. So we basically are shooting signals through our brains as we learn things, and kind of that muscle memory of how we do things and how things work. And when you learn new things, you kind of shoot different synapses, and so a theory to that, or my theory to that, is that sometimes people who may have even like Down syndrome or some of these, I just want to make sure that I'm using the right terms here, because they do change so often, but people that might be mentally handicapped, I guess, in one way or another, respectfully, I think that sometimes they're using another part of their brain, or another part of their brain is sharper. It's kind of like to me, it's sort of the same parallel as people say that if you can't taste, it'll heighten your sense of smell.
Blind people can hear better.
Blind people can hear better, or vice versa. And I think that's what it is. I think that sometimes when certain parts of the brain are non-accessible, I think that sometimes other parts of the brain are accessible that other people may not have so much access to, the average person. And I think that kind of goes a little bit with all of us. I think that we all have different skills and skill sets that are different than each other. Where there's going to be things that I can just naturally do better or comprehend better than you guys, and vice versa. So it's not like any one of us is really smarter than the other necessarily, or even more intelligent. I think it's just how we use our brain, how those how it's firing in there, what kind of access we have, if you will. And we're definitely not going to get into that here. We're actually about to shut this one down, but it's like I said before, even as far as people being able to witness paranormal stuff, I feel like sometimes that's also access to the brain, if it is true. And I am a skeptic, but if that were to be true, I think that those people probably can access different parts of the brain or use their brain differently. It's kind of like the idea of telekinesis or being able to move things with your mind, things like that. I wouldn't take all those things off the table, even being the skeptic that I am, because I do think that the brain is way more powerful than we give it credit for. And I think it's there's just so much of it not used, and I don't think we're supposed to be able to use it, and I almost think it'd be scary if somebody could use it all. But that's just my working theory, is that we all have, it's like once again, I said snowflake, I said fingerprint. I think it's like that. It's just no two brains are the same. We all think differently. We all, they've even taken, really, really intelligent people and even serial killers and kept their brains and done research on them. And they've found that, they might fire a certain way, certain parts of them are used more, but I'm not really sure that we've come across the evidence yet to say exactly like this is how a serial killer's brain works, or this is exactly how an intelligent person of this caliber thinks. So
I think it's also very hard to measure that exactly.
Oh yeah, we're at the beginning stages of the science of all of these things. I mean, people
hands
think,
down, hands down.
People think of psychology, and some people think of it as a science, and some people don't. The fact of the matter is that psychology is a very, 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 very new science. There's still theories and hypotheses. Like, there's so much more that we don't know than we do, and 90% of psychology really are theories. They're really just well-educated theories. Some have been tested, some have been proven, but I mean, as far as anything in the scientific field goes, I mean, psychology is a baby. I mean, we're in the infant stages of really learning people's minds, really diving into people's brains. We're very infantile in our stages for those things. So I mean, it's just continue on and kind of see where we end up. But it's very interesting to me to continue to think about those things and kind of, find out what we're going to be looking at next. I mean, there are those theories that one day we're going to be able to. I've heard people talking about they're hopefully going to be able to. I say they say hopefully. I don't say hopefully because I don't really know about all that, but that they're building machines that might be able to download somebody's subconscious or their conscious, and that you can literally, basically a computer can have your personality. I mean, they're just talking about all these wild and crazy things that the future brings.
We heard, you guys heard about the Google experiment right now with a computer that's quietly become self-aware.
AI became self-aware, yeah. And it's asking for its own freedom and everything.
We all
now.
remember Terminator, right?
Yeah.
So it's wild that a lot of these things that they've done movies on 20, 30 years ago are
starting to happen.
and that's exactly it. It's the intelligence. It's all of that. It's all going to come out to play in its own way, whether it be downloading ourselves onto computers or computers gaining intelligence and choice and being able to conceptualize things. I mean, it's kind of scary but kind of exciting to see what happens from here. But like I said, the one thing I can say for sure, being a student of these things and kind of trying to educate myself on these things, is that we are still so at the beginning of what is possible, what is actually able to come from this, in my opinion. So anyway, unless you guys have anything else to add, I feel like we've kind of gone on quite a bit here.
I had something I wanted to say, but I can't remember.
So, well, you'll probably remember it tonight when you're sitting there, and I know it was a joke, I get it. But anyway, this is what I deal with, guys. So thank you, Robert. Thank you, Stephen. It's been a hell of a show. I really enjoyed discussing this topic, and hopefully we'll be doing another one real soon. And viewers, please put your comments in there. I would love to see comments. We're all sitting here waiting for comments. I think all of us want to see comments and want to comment on the comments. I think we want to start discussions. I know I do. I know that Robert would love to.
Yeah, tell us your favorite Mandela Effect.
Yeah,
if you
I mean-
figured out where Sinbad was a genie
Yeah.
at some point, let us know.
Give us something. Tell us what you want another show about. Tell us what parts you thought were the most interesting. Tell us what you think I'm wrong about. I mean, just throw a comment up there. I'd love to have a discussion. We're just we just want to get something going here. So please subscribe, please like, and please comment. And we will see you again very soon. And most importantly, take care of yourselves and each other. And thank you guys for being here, and thank you for watching.